A fundamentalist Egyptian cleric insisted again today that he had nothing to do with the bombing of the World Trade Center in New York. Sheikh Omar Rahman also denies knowing two men charged in the bombing who reportedly worshipped at a mosque where he preaches. CNN's Charles Feldman has more on the cleric's interview with CNN.
The blind cleric, Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman, says neither he, nor his mosque, nor his religion would tolerate terrorism.
This is a false accusation that these people who bombed the World Trade Center, they are my followers. These are false accusations.
The Sheikh said he does not know either Naidel Ayad or Mohammed Salameh, the two men charged in the bombing, although anyone is welcome to worship with him.
They can pray in any mosque, but there is no any connection between me and them. And don't show me to all the world that I've been accused.
But this man, Mahmoud Abu Halima, now considered a suspect, is said to be close to the Sheikh.
I don't know him and I don't know where he is.
Abu Halima is a cab driver who may have fled to Pakistan after the bombing. Reportedly, he was once the Sheikh's personal driver.
I don't have a car, so that how come he drive a car that I don't have?
Sheikh Rahman said his religion, Islam, does not condone attacks on buildings or civilians.
Indeed, Allah, God, does not like those who transgress.
But he did have harsh words for the Mubarak government in Egypt, which he called corrupt and oppressive.
They control Egypt with fire and iron. And they control Egypt with a police state and force.
Is Iran or anyone else paying for the words that do stir unrest in Egypt?
There is no any relation between us and Iran, and there is no any money we have received from any government in the Middle East.
The United States is trying to kick the Sheikh out of the country, but he says the land of God is very large.
Tens of nations will receive me.
And even if the Sheikh may have worn out his welcome with the U.S. government, it could be years more before the courts force him to leave. Charles Feldman, CNN, Special Assignment, New York.
1986, Ahmed Ben Bella, a former president of Algeria, reportedly holds a secret meeting at his Switzerland home attended by major figures in some of the world's most violent groups. People attending the meeting, including the Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman, also known as the Blind Sheikh, Youssef Nada, head of All Al Taqwa Bank, and a major Muslim Brotherhood figure, Saeed Mohammed Hussein Fadallah, a leading Lebanese Shiite Muslim scholar. U.S. government sources believe Ben Bella, who is allegedly linked to violent Sudanese and Libyan groups, called the meeting to discuss ways to spread Muslim fundamentalism into the West. Shortly after 9/11, a document called The Project, written in 1982, will be found in Nada's house. It outlines a secret Muslim Brotherhood plan to infiltrate and defeat Western countries. By the mid-1980s, bin Laden and his mentor, Abdul Azam, jointly founded a charity based in Pakistan. It is called the Maktab al-Khidmat, which means the Afghan Services Office. Branches start to open in the United States. The first one apparently opens in Tucson, Arizona, where Al-Qaeda has a sleeper cell. But about 1986, Khalid Abu el-Dahab, the right man of double agent Ali Muhammad of the FBI and CIA, informally founds the branch in Brooklyn, New York, near the Al-Qifa Refugee Center. On December 29, 1987, three men, Mustafa Shalabi, Fawaz Damar, and Ali Shinawi, formally filed papers incorporating Al-Qifa, which is called the Al-Qifa Refugee Center. At first, it is located inside Al-Farouk Mosque, which is led by Dharma, but eventually will get its own office space next to the mosque. Shalabi, a naturalized citizen from Egypt, runs the office with two assistants, Mahmoud Abalima and El Said Noser. On December 15, 1986, Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman obtains his first U.S. visa via the Central Intelligence Agency. A State Department official will later discover that this was first of 6 U.S. visas given to him between 1986 and 1990. All are approved by CIA agents acting as consular officers at U.S. embassies in Sudan and Egypt. The CIA officers claimed that they did not know that the Sheikh was one of the most notorious political figures in the Middle East and a militant of Gamma Islamiyyah, who was partly responsible for the assassination of Anwar Sadat, the president of Egypt, in 1980. One top New York investigator would later say, left with the choice between pleading stupidity or else admitting deceit, the CIA went with stupidity. Abdul Rahman uses the visas to attend conferences of Islamic students in the United States. Then he visits Pakistan, where he preaches at Peshawar, visits the Saudi embassy in Islamabad, and is lionized at receptions which are heavily attended by the Americans. He plays a prominent role in recruiting mujahedeen fighters to fight against the Soviets in Afghanistan. In 1989, Abdul Rahman is arrested in Egypt and held under very closely guarded house arrest, but he manages to escape 1 year later, possibly by being smuggled out of the house in a washing machine. The CIA gives him another U.S. visa, and he moves to the United States in July of 1990. The Boston Globe will later say that throughout the 1980s, the blind Sheikh was a spiritual leader of the CIA-backed mujahedeen through Operation Cyclone. The Atlantic Monthly will later report that in the late 1980s in Peshawar, Pakistan, Abdul Rahman became involved with the United States and Pakistani intelligence officials who were orchestrating the Afghan war. The 60 or so CIA and Special Forces officers based there considered him a valuable asset. According to one of them, and overlooked his anti-Western message and indictment to holy war because they wanted to help him unify the mujahideen groups. He is unable to unify the groups, but he helps coordinate some of their activities. He tends to favor the two most radically anti-Western factions led by Gulbuddin Hekmatyar and Abdul Rasul Sayyaf. He also has close links to Abdul Azam, bin Laden's mentor. According to Barnett Rubin, a Columbia University professor and senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, Abdullah Azam was also working with the CIA to help recruit for and unite the mujahideen groups between 1985 and 1989. And when he is assassinated in 1989, the CIA relies even more heavily on Abdul Rahman. Rubin claims the CIA pays to send him back to Peshawar to preach to the Afghans about the necessity of unity to overthrow the Kabul regime. As a reward for his help, the CIA gives him a visa to the United States, even though he is on a terrorist watch list. One source who worked with the CIA supply operation at the time will later say that Abdul Rahman's ties to Hekmatyar, the CIA's most favored Afghan warlord, put Sheikh Omar in the CIA's good books. And believe me, later on when the Sheikh wanted to come to the States, he cashed in those chips. In the late 1980s, Osama bin Laden and his mentor Abdul Azam are running a charity in Peshawar, Pakistan, and build more buildings while doing so. The CIA apparently helps the Al-Qifa Brooklyn office send up to 200 people from the United States to fight in Afghanistan. Many of them are U.S. citizens. Zalmay Khalilzad, a State Department Afghan specialist who will go on to become a prominent neoconservative, will later deny knowing of any Arab Americans fighting with the Mujahideen. But one anonymous congressional aide will recall occasional mentions of Al-Qifa Refugee Center or its head Mustafa Shalabi by some of the most radical Mujahideen. He went on to say that among the cabal, the extreme militant fringes, Shalabi was known. They were asking to talk to him so he could organize some particular assistance. The Neutrality Act prevents U.S. citizens from fighting against countries not at war with the United States, but the New York Times will later note, yet there is no sign that a criminal investigation ever took place, even though federal agents had come across broad hints about the center's activities when they investigated the Mayor Kahani assassination in 1990 and the slaying of Mr. Shalabi in 1991. Kahani's assassin, El Said Nosser, was one of Shalabi's assistants. Apparently, the CIA's ties to the Al-Qifa Refugee Center prevent other U.S. agencies from investigating it, even after the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, when all of the bombers are found to have been tied to the center. While Al-Qifa closes itself down shortly after the World Trade Center bombing, it immediately reopens in Boston under a different name and continues to publish the same newsletter and post from the same website. The New Yorker will later comment, When the fanatical fervor the CIA whipped up leads to unintended consequences, the assassination of a Jewish militant leader in Manhattan, the bombing of the World Trade Center, a terror conspiracy to blow up the Holland and Lincoln tunnels, the CIA tried to discourage local law enforcement agencies and the FBI from looking into the matter too deeply. After Nasser assassinates Kahani, the FBI tells District Attorney Robert Morgenthau that Nasser was a lone gunman, not part of a broader conspiracy. However, the FBI had truckloads of evidence connecting to Al-Qifa, strongly suggesting otherwise, that it does not closely investigate, including some Israeli intelligence links to the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, in which one such agent, who was found to be on an application to the rental truck which had the bomb, went uninvestigated by the FBI, most likely pressure from the Central Intelligence Agency. The FBI also blocks him from tying Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman to the World Trade Center bombing in February 26 of 1993. Morgenthau will later speculate that the CIA may have encouraged the FBI not to pursue any other leads. Morgenthau will later say, the FBI lied to me. They're supposed to untangle terrorist connections, but they can't be trusted to do the job. Counterterrorism expert Steve Emerson, who also has any strong links with Israeli intelligence, will later call Al-Qifa Al-Qaeda's operational headquarters in the United States, even though Al-Qaeda was not an organization just yet, due to it being located in the Sudan and having no ties to any of the Baluchistan contacts, such as Abdul Basit Karim, also known as Ramzi Youssef, and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, his uncle. In 1994, a secret internal CIA report will conclude that the agency is partly culpable for the World Trade Center bombing because of its support for radicals connected to Al-Qifa Refugee Center. One CIA source will say, by giving these people the funding that we did, a situation was created in which it could be safely argued that we bombed the World Trade Center. But even after 1994, there was little evidence that the links from Al-Qifa were carefully explored by any U.S. government agency. For instance, the government will not freeze Al-Qifa's funds until shortly after 9/11, long after it ceased to exist. By 1990, the blind Sheikh visits London and gives several talks there to recruit fighters for the war in Afghanistan. The visits may be paid for by the CIA, which is said to be paying him for his travel at this point, and is also said to arrange U.S. visas for him. The talks are attended by future extremist leader Abu Hamza al-Masri, who later on would have a connection to somebody in the 9/11 investigation, Zacarias Moussaoui. Just how deep of a tie between the CIA and Abdel Rahman, but how much deeper do they have with radical militants abroad and inside the United States?